Cesar Millan has become famous as the dog whisperer, the man who can tame the most untrainable dogs. But now he's being sued, accused of having a pit bull that bit humans and even killed Queen Latifah's dog.
Cesar Millan tamed the world's most dangerous dogs. But behind the scenes, he was losing a battle against his own life. While millions watched him shout commands to animals, a devastating divorce, financial ruin, and an overdose attempt nearly silenced him forever.
In the show I say I train people, rehabilitate dogs. So the reason why dogs develop issues is because owners don't set rules, boundaries, limitations.
But this tragedy was only the beginning. In the end, he was forced to retreat and abandon everything. Now, a few eyebrows have been raised. How did he manage to bury his accusations in the dark till today? And did he manage to survive this collapse? Join us as we talk about what really happened to Cesar Millan.
When my journey began as the dog whisperer, I taught the world there is no such a thing as a bad dog. Today, my message has evolved. But it's clear that people and dogs still need help.
The origins of the dog whisperer. Cesar Millan was born on a farm where his grandfather was a tenant farmer, and where dogs were considered working animals rather than family members. He grew up handling dogs so naturally that the people around him called him El Perrero, which means the dog herder in Spanish. When they weren't performing duties on the farm, El Perrero would spend his time watching American television shows like Lassie and Rin Tin Tin. From these experiences, he developed an ambition to become the world's best dog trainer. But at that moment, the dream was a little bit far-fetched. That dream required him to be somewhere outside rural Sinaloa. And in 1990, at 21 years old, he paid a coyote his last $100, crossed the US-Mexico border illegally through the foothills around Tijuana, and arrived in San Diego. In his grass-to-grace story, he was obviously still in the grass stage. And in his travels, he carried these characteristics with him with enthusiasm. He arrived at San Diego without the ability to speak English properly, and on top of that, he didn't have any tangible contacts or a contingency plan. All he had going on for him was tunnel vision and his goal. He spent a month living on the streets of San Diego before finding his first job at a dog grooming salon, where clients quickly noticed he had a somewhat superhuman ability to calm anxious animals. Later on, he moved north to Los Angeles. In LA, he started working at an auto detailing business, bought a van, and began dog-sitting for dogs whose owners had deemed them problematic. He would take them in for days and train them to behave properly. Within a few rounds of doing this, he started building a name for himself in certain neighborhoods. To them, he was the Mexican guy on rollerblades who was always being pulled by a pack of leashed dogs through the streets of Inglewood and South Central. After gathering enough funds in 1998, he decided to open his own dog psychology center in South Central Los Angeles. Since he had already built a name for himself, it took just a little bit of time for word to spread far and wide. Before he could count the number of job applications, he already had a massive influx of clients, which eventually made a pivot to television possible. Ironically, amongst the people he met in LA, the most important and the one who launched his career was someone he met just shortly after he moved in. That person was Jada Pinkett Smith. She set him up with a friend who taught him English, and as his reputation grew, she became one of his earliest and most vocal Hollywood supporters, connecting him to other industry figures who became clients and, eventually, to producers who saw the television potential in what he did. As time went on, his television career reached an all-time low. At one point, it felt like no one in the industry could touch him, and this was exactly when things started going haywire. His rags-to-riches story was finally at its peak. But since he was now so high up in the sky, The shadows his success cast were as big as the whole of LA.
This difficult dog is in desperate need of a home. Cesar Millan is the best man for the challenge.
Go, go, go! Like I always say, I rehabilitate dogs and I train people.
An opposition lurking in the shadows. Most success stories usually include the presence of villains at the hero's peak of prowess. But Cesar's story was way different. From the very beginning of his success story, a serious and well-credentialed opposition was building propaganda around everything he did. As absurd as it sounds, they would eventually spend a whole decade trying to prove every step he took was evil and wrong. Cesar's main idea is simple, and he has said it for years. To him, dogs are like pack animals and need a calm, confident leader. He also believes dogs need three things the most: exercise, discipline, and affection. According to him, they need these three things in that order. Because of this, he uses methods like leash corrections, putting a dog on its back, and what he calls the touch. Rather than using words, he uses a quick physical touch to snap the dog out of a fixated mental state and redirect its focus back to the handler. These methods are based on the idea that dogs naturally follow a leader. So because of this hand shape and physical pressure mimic the quick, corrective nip a mother dog or pack leader gives a misbehaving puppy to enforce boundaries. The problem, according to these opposing animal behavior experts, is that the whole idea is flawed. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior says dominance-based training can actually scar dogs and make them more fearful or even aggressive. They also point out that the famous alpha wolf idea, which he was adopting, came from scientists studying wolves in captivity and not in the wild, and that even the scientists behind it later admitted it wasn't accurate enough to be used in real-life training and should be abolished. These experts argued that using it for training will most often make behavior problems worse, rather than solve them. They also make a case for how his popularization of the technique is misleading to his massive following and, therefore, will put animals at risk in the long run. Cesar strongly disagreed with their claims. For him, the proof should only exist in the results. He often points to dogs that were seen as dangerous or hopeless, which he says were rehabilitated and returned to normal family life through his methods. He also argues that while positive reinforcement sounds good in theory, it doesn't work for every dog in real situations. Many viewers agree with him, especially when they see the transformations on his show. But critics haven't held back. In 2012, on the Alan Titchmarsh show, Alan Titchmarsh decided to reinforce the backlash against Cesar. On TV, he directly called Cesar's methods cruel and unnecessary, referring to footage where he believed Cesar struck a dog in the throat. Cesar pushed back, saying it was only a corrective touch. The RSPCA also weighed in on air, doubling down on their warnings on his techniques, potentially causing pain and fear, and even worsening behavior problems. These two enemies never really reached a middle point to their argument, and sadly, over time, it escalated into lawsuits involving his credibility and the dogs under his care.
People in America were disconnected to somebody who we're in love with. You know, America is in love. I mean, modern society is in love with a dog, but they don't know dog.
Legal chess match. The first major lawsuit came in 2006, when Flody Suarez, a producer on the 8 Simple Rules show, filed a complaint in Los Angeles Superior Court alleging that his 5-year-old Labrador Retriever, Gator, had been severely injured at Cesar's Dog Psychology Center. According to the lawsuit, Flody dropped Gator off at the facility and received a call hours later saying the dog had been rushed to a veterinarian. When he arrived, Gator was bleeding from his mouth and nose in an oxygen tent, gasping for breath, and with severe bruising to his back and inner thighs. The lawsuit alleged that workers at Cesar's facility had placed a choke collar on the dog, pulled him onto a treadmill, and forced him to overwork. Eventually, Flody Suarez claimed that he had to spend more than $25,000 on veterinary bills. Uncannily, the case was settled in the following year with undisclosed terms. Just as it was looking like Cesar's business would finally do away completely with legal back and forths, almost a decade later, he had to revisit the interrogation box. In 2015, a Florida nurse named Allison Bitney filed a lawsuit against them. In the lawsuit, she claimed she had been attacked and permanently disfigured by a dog that had been released from Cesar's training center, and that the release had been premature because the dog had not actually completed rehabilitation. The complaint described disfiguring open wounds, deep muscle and tendon lacerations, and bone fractures. She didn't let this opportunity pass her by, and in the paperwork she sought punitive damages for what was characterized as a negligent release of an animal that the center had agreed to rehabilitate. The case added to a pattern that critics of Cesar were pointing to. According to them, it wasn't just about the methods used on animals in his care, it was also about the judgment being exercised on whether those animals were safe to return to the public. Even though this was a significant jab, the most consequential of the lawsuits came in 2021. In 2021, a plaintiff named Lydia Mattis decided to file suit over an incident that had occurred in 2017 when she was a minor and a level 10 competitive gymnast. It was the highest level in the USA Gymnastics Junior Olympics program.
According to her lawsuit, Junior bit Lydia repeatedly on the legs, causing deep puncture wounds and lacerations.
And the lawsuit alleged that Cesar's pit bull, Junior, had attacked her at an office building owned by Cesar in Van Nuys, California, biting her repeatedly on her left leg and causing injury so severe that she was unable to continue competing. According to her, she had been actively recruited by various universities, including the University of Pennsylvania, at the time of the attack. The lawsuit further alleged that the dog had a documented history of attacking both humans and other dogs before the incident, and that Cesar was aware of this history. The case was set to go to trial in the summer of 2022, but was also settled secretly, like Floyd's, before that date. The Lydia Mattis lawsuit contained one additional allegation that generated significant attention on its own. The claim that the dog had previously killed one of Queen Latifah's dogs during a training session at Cesar's facility, and that Cesar had covered up the animal's death by telling the singer that her dog had been killed by a car. Cesar's representatives called the allegation a blatant lie. But till today, the truth of the specific claim remains unresolved. Even though the case settled before a court could adjudicate it, the allegation itself, combined with the severity of what Lydia Mattis described happening to her at 17 years old, represented the lowest point of Cesar's legal exposure in his career. Meanwhile, on the other side of Cesar's life, while the lawsuits were causing public damage, he was suffering a personal crisis in silence. Nobody knew about it until very late, and it nearly ended his life entirely.
He's the most famous dog trainer in America, but now Cesar Millan, aka the Dog Whisperer, is under fire for, of all things, animal cruelty.
Cesar's experimental collapse. Everything fell apart for Cesar Millan in the first months of 2010. In AS 2022, butequants of losses that arrived too fast and too hard for any person to absorb in the normal way. In February, his pit bull, called Daddy, died of cancer at 16 years old. Daddy had been with Cesar since the early years of the Dog Psychology Center and had appeared on the show constantly. Whenever he appeared, it was evident that he earned his place as a recurring character and genuine working partner. He was a calm and experienced animal that Cesar used to help socialize troubled dogs. Daddy was so good at what he did that he became integral to the dog trainer's professional method. He was often referred to as his owner's mentor and went everywhere with him. Even on the red carpet, the dog trainer never failed to mention Daddy. He told Inside Edition that Daddy's death was the loss of a collaborator at the center of his professional life. And as fate would have it, just as he began healing from this loss, another followed suit. A month after Daddy died, while he was on tour in Europe, his wife of 16 years, Illusion, told him over the phone that she was filing for divorce. The statement hit him hard because he wasn't expecting it. According to him, they had been on good terms, and there was no sign of dissociation. This news forced him to fall into the hands of depression. Soon after, he stopped eating much, started interacting less, and lost weight. It was understandable because, to him, family was the most important thing, and it just felt like he had just lost it. Unironically, that was just the beginning of his woes, because, as his wife left, she took the last bit of financial capability he had left. These finances reached this state due to a devastating combination of exploitative business deals, a lack of corporate ownership, severe mismanagement, and a highly expensive divorce settlement. Despite being one of the biggest stars on cable television and a New York Times best-selling author, Cesar had now discovered he was essentially broke. Growing up poor in Mexico, the dog tamer operated on trust and traditional handshakes, usually seen dismissing the importance of the paperwork-heavy American corporate structure. Because of this nonchalance, he left his ex-wife and a team of early business partners in control of all of his accounts and financial operations. Then, as the divorce reached its court stage, the judge ordered massive payouts that further wiped out his remaining liquidity. He was ordered to pay his ex-wife a single cash payment of $400,000 and a continuous spousal support payment of $23,000 per month. In accordance with this, he would also pay an additional $10,000 per month for his two sons, Andre and Calvin. Even his older son, Andre, refused to reconcile with him for years afterward. It had quite literally reached a breaking point for him. That May, on the floor of his wife's house, he swallowed a combination of her Xanax and whatever other pills he could find, got into bed, and waited for the drugs to overwhelm him into the afterlife. According to him, if he did a random combination, he would pass on quicker. But luckily, in contrast to his wishes, instead of death, he woke up in the hospital psychiatric ward, where he was kept under observation for 72 hours. His response to waking up alive was characteristically practical. He gave his accounts on what drove him, then after talking about his struggles, he said, "I thought, well, shit, that means I'm not supposed to die. I'd better get back to work." He refused medication as part of his recovery, and instead opted to build his strength back naturally. This personal collapse happened at the same time the professional picture began to fray at the edges. And just like that, a heavy pig incident that would come in 2016 would bring more scrutiny to his desk.
A little black and white dog named Simon goes crazy, attacking every dog he sees. Then he spots a pig. Look out! The frightened animal suffered a bloodied ear.
The pig incident. Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan ran on the National Geographic Channel until 2012, when it was canceled after 8 seasons. A spin-off format called Cesar 911 launched on Nat Geo Wild and continued through 2016. And it was during this run that the incident occurred, which generated the most direct legal scrutiny of Cesar's methods. In a February 2016 episode, Cesar was working with a French Bulldog Terrier mix named Simon that had a history of attacking its owner's pigs. To address the behavior, Cesar arranged a direct training session with a pig. Simon attacked the pig, biting its ear and drawing blood. The episode was broadcast, and the American Humane Association responded formally, stating that the treatment of the animals did not meet their guidelines for the safe use of animals in filmed media. They created a document on the matter, and as time went by, more than 10,000 people signed a petition calling the methods inhumane. Los Angeles County Animal Control launched an investigation. The investigation concluded on April 11, 2016, when the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office declined to file charges, citing insufficient evidence and finding that Cesar's methods were safe and humane. The formal finding cleared him legally, but the episode had already done reputational damage that the exoneration could not fully undo. The Better Human, Better Dog series launched on National Geographic in 2021 and ran for 5 seasons, with the 4th premiering in April 2024 and the 5th following in August 2024. In late 2024, the show vanished from Disney+, where it had been streaming, with Disney offering a statement describing it as a standard business decision. Fans were frustrated. Cesar did not make a public statement about the removal. The show had not been renewed for a 6th season as of mid-2025. But through all of it that he had endured, Cesar kept building and finding new audiences who were not ready to let him go.
I began a brutal red zone rehab. Holy moly. Of 2 brothers turning violent against each other. That has left pet parents Trevor and Amy gripped with fear of their trouble pack.
At last, a comeback. Cesar Millan currently operates the Dog Psychology Center in Santa Clarita, California, a 43-acre facility in the mountains north of Los Angeles that serves as his training base, his filming location, and the physical embodiment of the dream he has described carrying since childhood. In March 2025, he launched a live virtual coaching membership called the Pack Leadership Community, and has also partnered with Excel Brands on various pet products. Right now, he is engaged to Jahira Dar, a Dominican-born woman he met when she was working as a salesperson at a Dolce & Gabbana store in Los Angeles, with whom he has been since 2011 and to whom he became formally engaged in 2016. His relationships with his sons have also healed, and they have appeared on some of his projects. The controversy over his methods has also still not been resolved, as his and the science community's views have not changed. He defends the results he produces, acknowledges that no single method works for every dog, and continues operating under a philosophy he developed and trusts. Do you think Cesar's methods work? Are they truly ideal? Or is the science totally right about it being animal abuse? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.